welcome to Behind the Incident. As you can see, my friend Sarah Edwards is already having a beer. Welcome to the show, Sarah.
Nice to see you, V. How are you?
I've been good. I've been busy. I've been triaging. I feel like a triage monkey at this point, but that's life, that's work. How have you been?
Busy. Currently in Prague with my right after class, so that's what I'm doing. So I truly deserve my first beer today.
I think so. Yesterday was the summit, and today is day one.
Correct.
And if I remember 518, it's action-packed, full of information up until day 6.
It absolutely is. Yep, pretty much. If I could make it a 2-week course, I could make it a 2-week course. But we try to pack in as much information into the course as possible. God, it's just so much to talk about. Apple does not give me any free time, that's for sure.
Oh, no, definitely. I must say, since my class with you, I've been twiddling with my watch and annoying my cardiologist at the same time, pulling data from my Apple Watch to say to him, look, the pacemaker is missing something. You should check it out.
That's important. That's really important.
How Sarah Edwards saved my life by teaching me how to dump health data.
It's cool, right? That could be your very next summit talk.
I think I should do that, how you correlate between what the pacemaker says versus what the watch says, because it's actually, they say 96% accurate. Was a study that was done by cardiologists, so it's fairly accurate. So Sarah, for those that don't know you, tell them a little bit about yourself, your background, and what you're currently doing.
All right. So I live in the States, specifically the DC metro area. I've been there for about the last 15 years or so, working on various government sites and contracts, all that fun DC stuff, if you will. But currently, I'm doing a lot of mobile device analysis, so iOS and Android. I don't like to let that get out too much, but I know, right? But yeah, I do a lot of mobile device forensic analysis and research. So it's a really fun thing. You get to dive really deep into it, and I've been really enjoying myself.
So Sarah, tell us a little bit about 518 that you authored and teaching at the moment, because I was privileged to take that course and I can highly recommend it. But for those that don't know the course, why should they take 518?
So 518 is the SANS Mac class. It's really the only Mac class for the whole SANS curriculum. So I make everybody drag a Mac to class. I have the most beautiful view of any other instructor. So it's Mac forensic analysis as well as iOS. And we also throw in an incident response component in there too to get all the bases covered. So like we were mentioning, it is jam-packed. So it's pretty much analysis of everything that has an Apple logo on it. So mobile devices, TVs, watches potentially, like introduce you to the watch for your current research, as well as, of course, the good old Mac itself. So lots of stuff going on there. There is just absolutely no lack of information.
So I am dying to ask you, why mobile forensics and how did you get into it? I personally hate mobile forensics. It's not my thing, but I know it's your thing.
Yeah. I love mobile forensics. Some days I hate it because, as a lot of folks know, it's just hard some days. Just getting to the data is just difficult. But I love it because it's always changing. Very much like the Mac world, but specifically the mobile world, it is always changing. There's always something new, which again, some folks may or may not like that. It's certainly not consistent, but it definitely keeps you on your toes. So the first time I ever did a mobile case was, I don't know, maybe about 13 or 14 years ago. This was before iPhones. This was certainly before Android devices. I was working at the Drug Enforcement Administration, and my first phone case was a giant FedEx box with about 40 phones in there. We had flip phones, we had candy bars, we had the sliders, all the different old school phones. 40 of them without charge cables. That's it. A bunch of SIM cards thrown in there too for good measure. And that was my first mobile. And they're like, here's a FedEx box, go. Okay, you figure stuff out pretty quickly. You know, back then it was actually more difficult, I think, because there was different software, there was different syncing software. You had Blackberries, you had, you know, LGs and Nokias, all of them running different variations of their operating systems. Some had sync software, some did not. Some of the very basic mobile forensics tools back then, sometimes you could get data, sometimes you can't get data. Sometimes you were taking pictures of the phones themselves. So that was always interesting and a long time to do analysis of that. Some of the phones had IR. So doing a data acquisition over IR, you had to align it just right. Then you hit your desk and then boom, you lose the connection. You're like, oh God, it was the worst. How I'm still doing it now is beyond me. But now I just do Android and I do iOS and it's fairly consistent. It just changes all the time. So yeah, that was my first introduction, but I loved the challenge. And I think that's what really kept me into it.
No, definitely. I remember still when I started mobile forensics, I started with MPE. And yeah, don't judge me.
No, we used MPE. We used oh God, gotta think of all those different tools. The mobile edits.
Yes,
Is that what I'm thinking of?
So
yeah, with all the different data, the proprietary data things. Old UFED from Celebrite. God, a lot of different stuff back then.
You are like the queen of Apple devices. So why Apple?
I grew up with Apple. My first computer was a a Macintosh LC2, commonly known as the pizza box format, if you will. Family computer, and I've been Mac ever since. I think I used a Windows box for about a year and a half in college as an engineering student. Did not like, so I went back to Mac, and that was just as the new Mac OS operating system was coming out, the Unix command line. I was like, yeah, I'm going back to a Mac. So I haven't really looked back since then. So it's always been my niche, always.
So your opinion on the new Apple launch products?
Like the new operating systems or the new like devices? What are we talking about?
Operating system, of course. We don't talk about devices much. It's more about what's inside the device.
Well, I was just showing my students today. I had just basically created a Catalina beta system to bring here to experiment with and start testing with, just to see what's different. Because every new operating system, Mac or iOS, you just never know quite what you're going to get. So still digging into iOS 13. Heather has done some great preliminary artifacts with iOS 13. I'm digging into the Mac side. Just saw today that iTunes is officially dead on Mac, and I'm frankly very happy to see that. System and data partition are now been split out. So you see a lot of the different artifacts really come into play. So keeping up on that is difficult, but it's always fascinating. What new artifacts can I find? No,
definitely. So I want to get in a bit and talk about Apollo. Okay. It's a tool that I've used. I enjoy it very much. I think it's the cape of the Mac world. It's good to use.
I don't think Eric Zimmerman would see it that way, but thank you.
It's a very good tool for everyone. You can get that on Sarah's GitHub. But tell everyone a bit about the tool. I mean, it is your baby.
Can you repeat that? You were cutting in and out.
I said you can tell everyone about Apollo because it is your baby.
Okay, so Apollo, it is my baby. It's a tool that came into its own because I needed something. There was all these iOS databases. I was dealing a lot with jailbroken devices, reading off these databases and basically making hundreds of different queries, maybe some 20 queries for a single database to extract very, very specific information. So I just really wanted to automate that. And I didn't make it overly complicated. It's called Apple Pattern of Life Lazy Outputter. That's what Apollo stands for. So I basically go in there, write queries, query the database, pull back that information, and put it into a database or a CSV to correlate it by timestamps. So you can see exactly what was going on the devices without having to run 100 different queries on, say, 20 different databases. So it was really just to save me some time. So I've been building that out. It's mostly for iOS devices right now, but I do want to add in more capability for Mac specific stuff. And that's what I want to do in this next year. So that's really going to be my main goal, I think. Assuming iOS 13 hasn't changed anything. Got to keep that up to date too.
Do you know Apple, they're bound to break some forensics for us, much like the Windows world does.
Absolutely.
What do most forensic haters fear? A new OS or an update?
I don't know. I guess we don't really see new operating systems all that much. We certainly see new updates. I would say that almost every year you almost get a new OS. I know it's technically an update, but coming from 10.14 to 10.15 Catalina, you need to be aware. You need to know, how is this going to affect me? Is it going to affect acquisition of the devices? Are certain artifacts, are they going to be encrypted? Are they changing file names, file paths, contents of databases andplists? It's a never ending struggle. So I don't know. I'd almost say that Apple releases a new operating system every single year. It feels familiar, but then you find that one thing that's different and you're like, oh, God, where do they put that now? Because they've changed something that you truly need in investigations. So
No,
my fall and winter are always catch up time. Yep.
so no, definitely. I think Mac is very interesting in the way that they structure their data, but I know Protobufs will forever stay with me as the most unique data artifact that I've come across in my life. And I hear you.
And we can't even blame Apple for that. That's
No,
Google.
but why don't you tell everyone what a protobuf is? You explain it so well.
Yeah, so I did write a blog article on this because they're so important, and I think they've been ignored for quite a long time. I know myself didn't have a clue what they were years ago. I've really just come into knowledge of protobufs in maybe the last 2 or 3 years or so. And that was from an Android device. I was doing a lot of Android stuff. It's Google. Google has this protocol buffer that they store data in. I actually first discovered it over network traffic, but they also use it a lot for data storage for certain applications. So it's just an extremely efficient way of storing values. So the keys themselves, you miss out on what that key information is because that's being stored in a .proto file, basically a definitions file for the protobuf, but you see the values. So really the hard part is, what are the keys? What do these values mean? What is the context surrounding them? And that's where a lot of the guessing comes into play. So first part is being able to recognize them. They don't have a header, there's no magic number. And I think that is the hardest piece. Second piece is actually parsing them, easy. And the third piece is interpreting the data. That's really difficult because you just don't know until you start testing.
So I think what people don't realize is how many different dates formats you get on a Mac. I think
yes,
that was like mind blown. I did not realize that was going on.
I know there's timestamps everywhere, and Mac and iOS, they love to throw a Unix epoch value right next to a Mac epoch value. They're making Unix epoch 64-bit timestamps now with APFS. You never know quite what you get. They're not stored in decimal all the time. They're stored in hex. Sometimes you have to convert. It's just being aware that timestamps existing and try to figure out what exactly is this timestamp. How is it stored? Is it stored in GMT? Is it stored in local time? So all sorts of fun stuff.
And I must say, I enjoy the Mac stuff. It's very interesting. It's a different flavor to Windows, and I think after 12 years, it's been enlightening as to actually how much my device is tracking me, especially having the watch, having the iPhone, having the Mac. So you call it pattern of life. I remember from class how you showed us your movements with your devices. And for those that don't know, Sarah's got extra phones, extra watches that she carries around with her.
Hey, you got to make test data, and traveling the world, which I am very lucky to do for a lot of my teachings and conferences. That's perfect data to get. So yeah, your phone tracks, wherever you are, every application you open, who are you contacting, your heart rate. We bring in the health data for that. I can see if you're running, or I can see if you're taking a slow saunter, down the main street of whatever town you might be in. It's fascinating, and that data is extremely creepy and detailed, but it's absolutely fascinating to look at somebody's information.
So what your Apple device is the ideal stalker?
Basically, yeah, I'm a digital voyeur, if you will. But I think most forensic analysts probably could call themselves digital voyeurs. You get to know a lot about somebody by looking at their devices.
Oh, yeah, I kind of don't want people poking around on my devices. It feels very intimate and very private.
So you're never going to let me borrow your phone? Is that what you're
Oh,
saying?
no, girl, you're not going near it at all. You of all people, no. I will break it before I hand it over.
Trustworthy.
Yeah, no, the Pope.
I can't blame you for that. I can't.
It's because I know better, because you trained me. I know what you're capable of. So, what advice do you have for people wanting to start iOS and Apple forensics? What is that one piece of advice that you would give them?
Definitely get access to those devices. I know they're expensive, but having a Mac, having an iPhone that you can start playing around is really going to help you with forensics. If you don't know how the system works, you're not going to know how to forensicate it. And that's the hard piece is you have to get into the mind of how Apple does its stuff. And Apple does some really, really strange stuff that doesn't make all that much sense. Once you start looking into it, you'd be like, oh, okay, I see what they're doing here. You really start investigating towards that. So if you can pick up even if it's a refurbished or an older model, you can still get a lot of really good useful information out of it.
No, definitely. Now, what do you do to relax? Except for, carry around phones and collect data. What does Sarah Edwards do to wind down?
So I travel a lot, so I do really try to find ways of taking myself out of either the classroom or the travel and doing stuff. So usually when I get into a new place, no matter where I travel, is I try to take a long walk or try to go for a run, try to get outside because I know I'm going to be stuck in a hotel room for the next week. So I really try to get outside. And of course, I post my pictures to Twitter, trying to get everybody else doing some little bit of deeper fit here and there. But I put my AirPods in and I walk, and I can just walk miles whatever city I'm in, go find some spot, walk to it. Maybe it's a museum. Maybe it's, climbing up a mountain to go to a brewery, which I did in Prague. Might as well have a beer at the end of this hike.
The one
Makes
in the
things all that better. That's one of the ways that I both get exercise and actually get some fresh air and just enjoy the city. Traveling a lot, you want to see sights, see museums, see people, see what the actual city is all about. Other than that, I nap. I love to nap. If I'm stressed out, I nap. If some problem is just not being solved for me, if I can't parse something, take a quick nap. Now, granted, not at the day job. I can't exactly crawl under my desk and nap, but it does seem to help me just sit, be mindful, think about how can I solve this problem without being on the computer the entire time. Now, I am on the computer a lot. Basically have 2 full-time day jobs with real day job and the SANS teaching. So I do try to find time myself. Or I just Netflix, sit on the couch, veg, do nothing but watch Netflix.
How's your cat doing?
Cat's doing well. Yeah, he's alone right now, unfortunately, but he's doing all right. He just chills there. He loves it when I come back. So it's always nice to have a friendly face when you get back home.
No, definitely. So, instant response on a Mac device or an Apple device is a little bit different than on Windows. So, what is the main difference you would say that makes it the most unique?
I think it's probably getting access to the specific data you want. If you don't know what you're looking for from an incident response standpoint, you don't know what to collect. Even if you do know what you want, sometimes you just can't get it. Just talking today about the SIP protections. Just because it's there doesn't mean you have access to actually get it. So you kind of have to think, is this file protected? Is this directory protected? Can I actually get access to it? Are my tools going to get capability to access it? And just start working into that scenario. So again, using the Mac gives you a lot of that background knowledge of why you can't and can't get access to things. So I really do recommend, not you don't have to use it every single day, but do make it a part of your daily usage.
So I've had some clients say to me, but can Apple devices be hacked? Can they have malware? And the answer for me was yes, they can. What is your opinion on this? Everyone seems to think Apple never gets malware.
Yeah, they definitely do. Both Mac, both iOS. Keeping up with that, it's absolutely fascinating. This is why I use Twitter. The checkmate stuff just came out for the boot ROM for iOS. That is absolutely fascinating, and keeping up with the jailbreakers from the iOS perspective. From the Mac perspective, certainly following folks like Patrick Wardle and a few of the other jailbreakers, trying to keep up with some of the malware on Macs is absolutely worth doing. Just because you don't always hear about it doesn't mean it's impossible, because it absolutely is.
I think what people don't realize is that Apple's got quite the sophisticated quarantine and sandbox system that runs in the background. And I
Right.
recently used that in a case and I identified where the malware was placed
Yep.
and where it was stopped. So, it does have that capabilities.
Mm-hmm.
So, what is your favorite data artifact on Mac and on iOS?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think my favorite data artifact on Mac specifically, I think right now it might be FS events. Yeah, let's go with FS events. Knowledge C is a close second, but Knowledge C on iOS, I think might be my favorite iOS artifact. Yeah. So FS events keeps track of a lot of the file system events. So I can see all the different files, if they're being accessed or not, are they being changed, are they being modified, removed, created, deleted. And that is just fascinating. There's a ton of information being stored in there. And then I think Knowledge C is keeping track of so much user specific data. What applications are being used? Is it plugged in? Is it other different pattern of life type of things in there? But it's absolutely extremely fascinating. I think it's probably one of my favorite databases. If people do that, I do that. I have favorite databases.
Of course, FS Events is definitely a favorite of mine, that much I can tell you. But I think people underestimate the amount of data that SANS can push in a week
Mm-hmm.
and 5
Yep.
days, because day 6 is all about the challenge. And just so that you know, your playlist is my go-to thing for when I'm working at the moment, with some additions. It's
Excellent.
epic. It's
Yeah.
good. But I must say, the best tool for doing Mac forensics is a Mac.
Mm-hmm. I
The
would
way
tend to
that
agree with you there.
there's many tools that claim fame to be awesome with these devices, and they just simply are not.
Yeah.
But I want to hear from you. What would you recommend for people going to Prague? What's fun to do?
To Prague specifically. Of course, if you like beer, there is a very much an unlimited supply of excellent Czech beer here. The Apple Museum. I know
Yes.
it's weird, but there's an Apple Museum here. It's not official. I think it's just a collector that has their collection in this museum. It's right in Old Town. I just told my students to go there. It's relatively cheap to get in, but it's fascinating and it's just strange. Why the heck is there an Apple Museum in the middle of Prague? Other than that, certainly eat some Czech food. Eat Czech food, drink Czech beer, and you're going to be a happy camper.
So I see Adam is your facilitator this time around. I hope that he's behaving, which is generally going to be a
So
no.
far, he's mostly behaving. He is mostly behaving. But yeah, no, he's a delight to have in class. And now that's recorded. So I guess
Oh,
that's that.
so who's better at facilitating, me or Adam?
Ooh. I would prefer not to answer that question.
That's a good
You both
answer.
have your unique values.
Yeah, I'm
You're
short
both
and he's
slunky.
tall.
I can see eye to eye with you. How's that?
Well, not quite. I'm a little shorter than you, as you often point out. I look up to you and most of other people.
Yeah. I can't say that to too many people, so I got to take it where I can. Sorry.
Your birthday month.
It is. Yep. I'll spend my birthday in February as well. So if you are around if you're around London during that time, let's go out and have a good time.
But Sarah, you must have a phenomenal time in Prague, and I will speak to you soon.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Okay,
And you
bye.
have a great one.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.